Katie,
yeah,
you don't want any of that
Charlottesville
smoke.
rally was,
I promise
was led by the Southern Poverty Law Center.
If you think white nationalism is made up by the Southern Poverty Law Center, no wonder you don't have a problem with what J.D.
The kind
Vance
you're
said about
talking
Nixon.
about in MAGA it's made up by the Southern Poverty Law Center. It absolutely was.
Chris Cuomo went head-to-head with outspoken MAGA supporter and fellow News Nation host Katie Pavlich after she confidently argued that white nationalism is nothing more than a fake label created to target MAGA supporters. Yes, you heard that correctly. This is truly one of those moments you have to watch to believe. We're going to go through some of the most intense moments from this fiery clash between Chris Cuomo and Katie Pavlich. By the end of the debate, she looked like she was close to breaking down in tears. I'll also be sharing my own thoughts along the way, because this is definitely a debate that deserves a closer look. So with that said, let's get straight into it together.
Why did I think that? Because I realized that the ugly things that I saw coming out of MAGA, the prejudice, the white nationalism, the Christian nationalism, that was the few.
That was made up by the Southern Poverty Law Center?
No, it wasn't made up. Oh, please, Katie.
Yeah, the Charlottesville rally was led by the Southern Poverty Law Center.
If you think white nationalism is made up by the Southern Poverty Law Center, no wonder you don't have a problem with what J.D. Vance said about Nixon.
The kind you're talking about in MAGA it's made up by the Southern Poverty Law Center. It absolutely was.
So there are no real bigots in MAGA.
And an indictment by DOJ to show it.
So there are no real bigots in MAGA. There are no real white nationalists. They've all been put up to it by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Like January 6th was an inside job by the FBI.
That's what the indictment says.
What indictment says? What indictment says that the FBI did January 6th? I love hearing the conspiracies.
I was talking about the indictment of the Southern Poverty Law Center in Alabama, which details how the Southern Poverty Law Center specifically paid the organizer of the Charlottesville rally to take people to and from to make up this fake hate rally that they then used against the president and the right for years. SPLC has been accusing conservatives and the right of...
Just take a moment to think about how unbelievable Katie Pavlich's argument is here. As the debate continues, it becomes clearer and clearer that Chris Cuomo is simply operating at a much higher level. No matter what you personally think about Chris Cuomo, and I know a lot of people are not exactly his biggest fans, it's difficult to miss the gap in the way the two of them handle this debate. Katie Pavlich's main tactic, if it can even be called one, is the same approach many MAGA supporters tend to fall back on. Rather than answering Chris Cuomo's arguments, she repeatedly cuts him off and tries to speak over him. It's the exact same thing she often does with guests on her own show, but this time it doesn't have the same effect because Chris Cuomo is a far more skilled debater who calmly pushes past every interruption without ever losing control of the discussion.
If you don't think there's white supremacy, if you think they created white supremacy, if you think the Southern Poverty Law Center created white supremacy,
they did.
You go with that, Katie. I'll tell you what, because I've met a lot of people with dead family members in the South who don't think the Southern Poverty Law Center is responsible.
It's about SPLC
First of all,
and the left manufacturing their political arguments.
An indictment, not to mansplain, but an indictment is a charging document. It's a bunch of allegations, not facts. And they are not even charged with doing anything like organizing it.
Thank you very much.
Well, then don't make it sound like it's a fact, because it's not a fact. If you know what it is, then you know you shouldn't represent it as a matter of fact, right?
Okay, Chris. I don't need you to lecture me about belittling the American people, talking to me about how I don't know what an indictment is. I've been working in this industry for 20 years, and you sitting here and acting like I don't know what I'm talking about.
At this stage of the debate, Katie Pavlich looks like she's getting close to completely falling apart. Keep in mind, this is someone who hosts her own television show. While News Nation may not have the same reach or influence as CNN or Fox News, and it's also worth remembering that Katie Pavlich got her start at Fox News, it's still difficult to ignore how much she struggles during this exchange. Chris Cuomo continues laying out facts while calmly picking apart every talking point she tries to defend. In my opinion, she shows exactly the kind of behavior many people would describe as genuinely nasty. Donald Trump often uses that word when talking about women like AOC and others who disagree with him. But if you ask me, Katie Pavlich fits that description far more closely. She comes across as confrontational, keeps falling back on political talking points, and never really addresses the facts Chris Cuomo keeps putting in front of her. What makes this debate even more enjoyable to watch is seeing Chris Cuomo laugh at how unbelievable some of her arguments are, making it even more obvious that those claims simply don't hold much weight.
Disrespectful.
Well, listen, I don't mean it that way, Katie. I want to try to get to what's behind some of these arguments. Like, I think going after the Southern Poverty Law Center,
I don't think you're doing the best way.
I think that's dangerous. I think J.D. Vance saying it's okay to commit a burglary
funding false white supremacy
is dangerous.
And falsely accusing conservatives of white supremacy is dangerous. I think saying that people are hateful, like Charlie Kirk, putting him on a hate watch map is dangerous, and he lost his life as a result of this fomenting of this fake
he was killed for what he believed.
We've seen terrorizing the right forever from places like the Southern Poverty.
Charlie Kirk was without question a highly divisive figure whose comments and political message were often seen by many people as inflammatory and deeply offensive. Even so, his death was still a tragic event because no one deserves to lose their life, no matter what their political beliefs or personal opinions may be. Although he regularly promoted ideas that many critics considered racist and harmful, it's still entirely possible to strongly oppose everything he stood for without believing that anyone deserves to die because of those views.
A set of facts they will use in federal court, in front of a judge, and in front of juries to make their case. That is real.
They're not
and
facts.
If you want to deny it, you can, but it is a fact.
No.
What are they then? They're just made up? They're made up? What are they then?
An allegation is an uncorroborated suggestion that must be proven at trial by material and competent evidence that is found compelling to a judge or a jury. Otherwise, it's just a charging document. But an indictment doesn't have facts. An indictment is putting something forward that they'll believe they'll prove, as a matter of fact. Maybe, we'll see. And if they show that the Southern Poverty Law Center set up the Charlottesville thing, they should all go to prison. If they can show beyond a reasonable doubt that people at the Southern Poverty Law Center created hate groups, they should all go to prison, Katie. I'm here for it. And if you get that story, I will have you lead the whole show. I'll be your correspondent on it.
Well, I have my own
you
show
can have my whole hour.
So I appreciate that.
I know, but I'm saying I'd give you both hours.
10 o'clock. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Because I want that. I want us to get to a place where we just call right and wrong everywhere. If the Southern Poverty Law Center did that, wrong.
One thing about Chris Cuomo is that he often takes a both sides approach, and that's not something I always agree with. Even so, I don't see him as someone who is simply pushing propaganda. Katie Pavlich, however, comes across in a completely different way. She doesn't appear to be focused on figuring out what is actually right or wrong. Earlier in the discussion, she described herself as an independent, but judging by the way she argues, that claim doesn't really line up with what we're watching. She repeatedly defends MAGA and sounds more like a spokesperson for Donald Trump, J.D. Vance, and the rest of the movement than someone offering an independent point of view. Her role seems to be promoting the MAGA narrative whenever she gets the chance. From the very start, she falls back on the usual talking points about socialists and continues using that same approach throughout the debate. In her eyes, almost everything MAGA does is portrayed as right, while nearly everything connected to Democrats or the political left is treated as wrong. That's what really separates her from Chris Cuomo in this conversation. Chris Cuomo is trying to debate the issues based on facts and principles, while Katie Pavlich seems much more interested in defending a political side than honestly discussing what is right and what is wrong.
Real indictment, and take the facts seriously.
I believe that it's a real indictment. An indictment is not a set of facts. And a lot of times they can't prove it.
Then she goes back to the familiar line that you can indict a ham sandwich. In other words, she's arguing that just because the DOJ decides to bring charges against someone, it doesn't automatically mean those accusations are true. She presents that argument as if it's beyond question, but the fact that the DOJ files charges doesn't mean every allegation is immediately accurate or proven. That's the point she's trying to make, even though she delivers it as if there's no possible debate or disagreement.
He was indicted. Do you believe he was guilty of everything he was accused of in the indictments?
There were some of the facts that were proven to be true and some of them that were not. And a lot of them were developed in a false nature by political actors who we saw for years and years and years tried to keep the president out of politics while they claimed they were for a democracy and preserving this right that we have, while they destroyed his reputation with false smears. When it comes to the Southern Poverty Law Center, over 10 decades, we know what happened. There are many examples of people talking in detail about things that were happening to them and the terrorizing the SPLC did to them and put them on maps, like the Focus on the Family was terrorized. There were a number of people who testified as a result of this out of court for years about what the SPLC was doing. So that is real. If you want to go back into what Trump was indicted for, we have litigated that over and over again. That was a political witch hunt.
I'm not relitigating it. I'm not relitigating it. Here's what I'm saying. Trump was indicted. Everything in the indictment was not true. I agree with you. The Southern Poverty Law Center has been indicted.
I think you're making it absurd.
What Chris Cuomo is highlighting here completely weakens Katie Pavlich's argument because it exposes the clear double standard she's relying on. When the issue involves Donald Trump, she quickly dismisses every investigation or legal case as nothing more than a political witch hunt, because she's firmly on his side. But when the Southern Poverty Law Center identifies white nationalism as a serious issue, she rejects that conclusion without hesitation, either because she refuses to accept it or because she honestly believes it's untrue. From her point of view, any criticism of Donald Trump is automatically unfair simply because she supports him, while criticizing the Southern Poverty Law Center is perfectly reasonable because she disagrees with its findings and seems willing to defend people connected to those ideas. Chris Cuomo takes a much more direct approach. His point is that the legal system isn't supposed to operate based on personal opinions or political loyalty. Whether someone supports or dislikes a particular person or organization has nothing to do with how the law is meant to function. Anyone watching this exchange can clearly understand the point he's making. Katie Pavlich continues leaning on her personal beliefs, while Chris Cuomo keeps bringing the conversation back to facts and legal principles. That's exactly why the difference between the two becomes more obvious as the debate goes on.
President Trump. They are not comparable in any way. It's completely different scenarios, completely different political arenas, completely different contexts in terms of years of what had happened before the SPLC indictment.
Maybe that's a bit harsh, but if you've watched Katie Pavlich before, you probably know exactly what I mean. She has a reputation for being extremely confrontational with the guests on her own show, and that's one of the reasons this debate was so interesting to watch. From beginning to end, Chris Cuomo stayed calm, patient, and respectful, even as she continued making arguments that, in my opinion, simply didn't stand up to basic scrutiny. I think most reasonable people would struggle to take some of those claims seriously, and Chris Cuomo's reactions made that pretty clear. What really set this debate apart was that Katie Pavlich finally faced someone who wasn't willing to let her control the conversation. She couldn't just interrupt him, talk over him, or push her way through the discussion the way she often seems to do, because Chris Cuomo was ready for that approach and answered her with clear, well-thought-out responses every time. Whether you agree with Chris Cuomo on every issue or not, I believe he clearly came out ahead in this debate. He thoroughly dismantled Katie Pavlich's claim that the Southern Poverty Law Center somehow created the idea of white nationalism just to go after MAGA supporters. When you actually stop and think about that argument, it's hard to see how it holds up under serious examination. But that's simply my opinion. Let me know what you think down in the comments. Maybe you agree with Katie Pavlich, although I'm not exactly sure why you'd be watching this channel if you believe white nationalism is nothing more than a made-up idea designed to attack MAGA, or maybe you think Chris Cuomo presented the stronger argument throughout this exchange. I don't think Chris Cuomo is right about everything, but in this debate, I believe he did an excellent job of breaking down Katie Pavlich's claims and pointing out the flaws in her position. It's honestly surprising to me that someone who performed like this is hosting a television show, even on a network the size of News Nation. As always, I'd love to hear your thoughts, so let me know what you think in the comments.